How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. Thank you for taking the time. Like I said, I know you've
Thank
been
you for coming to my office.
incredibly busy. And there was a moment in the beginning where you were able to speak to some of us reporters. And then very early on, it was clear. I think our last interview was me walking and talking with you, and you just talking about the defense that you were building. And that was it after that.
Yeah, we were pretty shut down during the trial by design. You know, we had asked the judge actually for a little bit of a gag order, and the judge gave it to us, so we had to and wanted to sort of abide by that and kind of keep it out of the press. I mean, try the case in the courtroom, which we feel that we did.
So, of course, I want to start with July 2nd.
Okay.
You go up to the microphone. There's about a dozen microphones there. Everyone's smiling.
Right.
You step up first. You're the lead attorney for this case. Mm-hmm. Today is a great victory. It's a great victory for Sean Combs. It's a great victory for the jury system. You said you saw this coming.
Yeah, I saw it coming.
That morning.
I did. I saw it coming. I saw it coming that morning when the jury said that they had verdicts on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, but not on count 1. I thought that it must be that they split on the Mann acts on the one side and then the sex trafficking on the other side. Because if it would have been all the way one or the other, they would have agreed, I think, on the racketeering conspiracy. Mm-hmm. So my guess was that they convicted him of the prostitution, the Mann Act counts, and acquitted on the sex trafficking.
Take me back to just that moment, because I've heard you talk about how you didn't really sleep a lot during this trial.
True.
And that you typically don't sleep a lot to begin with. But what went into this case? It had to be, I'm sure, the most publicized in the 35 years that you've been practicing law.
True. Yes. Definitely the most publicized of my entire career, by a long way. I mean, Ranieri was publicized, Martin Shkreli was publicized. I've been blessed to have a lot of cases that people care about, but nothing close to this. And the press was every little thing. I mean, I thought the press was very aware of what was going on in the courtroom. They covered it very closely. I thought they covered it actually fairly accurately. And so it was a tremendous amount of preparation, a lot of pressure trying to keep the team together, a lot of pressure because, you know, Sean Combs, I mean, I believed in my heart that he was innocent. You know, the prostitution's tricky, but we're still sort of fighting that. And so there's a lot of pressure to win. And that's what this was all about.
For people who were not inside the courtroom, there was cheering, praying, celebration. There was a moment where Combs had his hand up, and in real time, we're watching as a decision is made and he's not going to speak. It seemed like he wanted to say something in that moment. Is that true, or what was going on?
I think he did. I think he wanted to speak to the judge. I think he's not someone who's used to people speaking on his behalf. I mean, I think he became Sean Combs, you know, and he built all the things that he built by being the front and center guy. And this was a real adjustment for him. And so I think it's not natural for him to sit back and let others speak on his behalf. But we also told him that was best and that's what was going to happen. And he agreed.
Was this the most challenging case that you've ever tried in your career?
That's a great question. It's up there. I mean, I've had missile trafficking, you know, trials. I've had political corruption trials. When I was a prosecutor, I prosecuted serial killer hitmen. You know, so they're all different. This was probably the most difficult in terms of getting the team together. I never had a defense team like in this case, and I was lucky to have such a great group of lawyers. But
from all over the country.
From all over the country. I mean, we had Brian Steele and Nicole Westmoreland from Atlanta. I mean, gifted, great lawyers. You know, we had Xavier Donaldson, Alexander Shapiro, Jason Driscoll, Anna Esteval, you know, me and Tenny. And so we really had this great group of lawyers, but we needed a leader, you know, and I'm not really a natural leader. I'm just not. I'm a trial lawyer. You know, it's different. It's a different skill set. And I've never really tried to be a leader or had to be a leader. I'm a soldier, you know, and I'm proud to be a soldier. So this was a different role, and I had to kind of like step into the role. I mean, I kind of saw my team needed that, and we needed harmony. We needed, we have great lawyers who are used to all being front and center. We all needed, including myself, we have to leave our egos at the door. We have to do what's best for Mr. Combs. And so that was challenging. And then, the government was very well prepared. They had 6 outstanding prosecutors. I mean, it's a marquee case for what many say is the best prosecutor's office maybe in the world, the Southern District of New York. And this is probably their biggest case of the, not so new century. And so it was high stakes. It's Game 7 in Yankee Stadium. And so it's pressure.
The stakes are still high. Presently,
True.
Just this week, the judge, Arun Subramanian, said no to bail. Second time that he's done this.
It's true.
How many times have you sought bail for Sean Combs?
So I've counted because I've never been 0 for 5 in a case in my career. And I've tried to get bail for Mr. Combs 5 times, and I'm 0 for 5. So, I made the Yankee Stadium reference. If I was up at bat, an 0 for 5, outing is not so great.
Does that hurt you later with sentencing, just because you have made these arguments over and over again, obviously with different judges, but with this judge twice, and more recently, the judge cited evidence of violence and coercion, and said that concerns about Combs' safety, the judge said that he acknowledged the staff had been able to keep him safe even during an incident of threatened violence from an inmate. So in your opinion, you speak to Sean Combs often. What is going on at the Metropolitan Detention Center that you're saying you believe he's in danger?
So he's a very public personality, and it was a very public trial. I think that there is always the risk that some people are going to be envious or jealous, maybe jealous that he might be going home before they do. And so, I think it's been more challenging for the outstanding staff at the MDC to kind of step up, do the things that they need to do to keep, Mr. Combs safe. And they've been doing that, and they've been outstanding with us. And I know that they get their, more than their share of grief from time to time, but they've been very, very good with us and very, very good with Mr. Combs, and I really appreciate the way they've handled things. But it's a challenging situation.
Had you brought that issue up before, though, or is this something that had been building because of recent incidents? You talked about in your document, you said that there was an inmate that was stabbed just above Combs. So help us understand sort of from September of 2024 to now how things have changed and why that's something that you brought up.
I think that's largely, the other stabbing I think is largely anecdotal. I don't know that has anything to do with our case or Mr. Combs. I think it does not have anything to do with it.
Okay.
But what I've seen, and what he tells me is that it's a little different ever since the verdict, and maybe it's because he's perceived.
Good or bad?
A little more tense, not from the staff, but from certain people, other inmates. And so, I think that there are a lot of people who really support him among the inmate population. I think a lot of inmates take faith and heart in the fact that someone has won. I mean, all they really tend to see is they lose. You go to trial and you lose, and that's what they see. And so the fact that Mr. Combs won his trial largely, not completely, of course, I think is seen as giving everybody a little bit of hope. That being said, I think that there's lots of different ways people can feel.
What about this consistent thread that Judge Subramanian continues to say? The judge has said the first time when he denied bail that there was an issue of violence and coercion. And he used those same words this week. Right. Your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts are he was convicted of he was acquitted of coercion. I mean, that was the sex trafficking count. And a jury of 12 New Yorkers acquitted him of that. Now, I don't think that is going to play a role at the sentencing because he's being sentenced on straight prostitution. But in terms of
the violence, though, which you acknowledged in court when you opening statements, not from you, but Tenney, this is not about racketeering conspiracy. Was there domestic violence? Absolutely.
No question.
You own that.
We owned it. We owned it then. We own it now. I mean, I said it in the closing, and I say it now. That it's large. It's in the past for the most part. There's one event that happened in the summer of 2024 where the woman called Jane admits that she provoked, something that ended up being violent on both sides. His relationships were toxic. He's not proud of that. There was mutual violence, but that doesn't excuse a man being violent toward a woman ever. And we never said that it did. And so at the end of the day, he started seeking help, counseling. He was in a program before he was arrested in this case. He was productive. He was going. I'm in touch with the people in the program. And I think that when he gets out, he's going to start that again. I mean, the programming at the MDC is not great. It's really almost non-existent. So we've put together, therapists and people who go in and speak to Mr. Combs. And
how often?
Every 2 weeks. I mean, it's pretty regular. And we did it during the trial, but before the trial as well. And so and I think it's helpful. I mean, I think it's what he needs. I was in the DA's office when I was 25 years old, and I probably had 200 cases. I bet 30 of them were domestic violence, mostly committed by men. And so this is a well-worn path, in the criminal justice system of men being violent with their domestic partners. And I think the best way to deal with it is therapy, counseling. A lot of times their partners don't want them to go to jail. They want them to get help. They want them to get better. They want them to be the men that they fell in love with, and that's really what I want for Mr. Combs.
When's the last time you spoke to him?
Mr. Combs?
Yes.
Today.
What did he say?
We were just talking about, sentencing and some of the questions you're asking about, what does the judge's ruling on bail, how does that relate to sentencing? And I explained to him it really is two completely different things, and it's two different sort of bodies of laws and rules. So, the bases by which a judge can keep someone in jail are very different than the bases on which the judge sentences the person.
Do you speak to him every day?
Every day, several times a day.
Does he know you're doing this interview?
I think he does, but not from me.
Okay.
I think he was told.
Is there anything that he can say that he wanted to get through, because you are now speaking more publicly about the case and just sort of what's next? But maybe a better question, what is it that Sean Combs wants people to know? Because he's, limited to what he can say.
Yeah. So he wants people to know that I think that he has reflected on the blessings that he's been given, on the imperfections that I think he sees in himself, just like we all have. I think he wants to be a better, more present father than he's ever been. I think he wants to start small. I think he wants to get out of jail, reestablish, a loving, present relationship with all of his 7 children. He wants to take care of his mother. His mother she's going to get mad at me. She's getting older, but she's beautiful and fashionable as always. But he wants to get back in his life. I think the larger goals are down the road. Does he want to get back into music? Does he want to get back into business? I think he's someone who is always going to strive to do something, exceptional and probably demanding and challenging. But I think the most demanding and challenging thing in front of him right now is to get back with his kids and get back with his mother and the people who love him and miss him.
So he's talked to you about getting back into music if he's released, if he's free?
No, honestly, he has not.
Okay.
One thing he said he's going to be back in Madison Square Garden.
He said that?
He did. He said to me he's going to be back in Madison Square Garden.
Doing what?
I guess being on stage, and I said, I'll be there. I want to be right in the front. So we'll see. We'll make it happen.
So you talk to him every day. How long do these conversations typically last? Sometimes
2 hours, sometimes 15 minutes, usually several times a day. Either on something called the VTC. It's like a Zoom setup. I go see him. I'm going to see him tomorrow morning. So I spend a lot of time physically with him in the jail, but also on these videos.
Marc, I know there's been so much celebration about what he was acquitted of, but he's still facing 2 felony convictions. Each count carries up to 10 years behind bars. Are you preparing him for the worst, or are you optimistic that he's not going to get a lot of time, if any time, or he'll get a pardon?
Right. The pardon, that's not my end of the business. I know really nothing about that.
But you're the lead attorney, and you know Nicole Westmoreland said that there have been conversations.
She did. She did. I know mostly what I know from what the president has said.
But wait, how are you the lead attorney?
You know,
and she's saying that the team has had conversations with the White House, with the administration.
I can just tell you what I have had conversations with nobody.
You haven't spoken to the president?
I have not. No, not. I have not spoken to the president. I have not spoken to anybody who speaks to the president about Sean Combs. I have not.
So she said, and I just want to quote Nicole Westmoreland, who's part of the team, said that it's her understanding that we have reached out and had conversations, that they have spoken to people who would be responsible for the pardon process. And at a time where I think there's a lot of attention, not just on the president and his actions, but on what will happen here with Sean Combs, you mean to tell me that you really have nothing to do with a possible pardon right now?
Nothing. I have nothing to do with a possible pardon. I mean, I have my hands full with, with sentencing and bail. I mean, really, I'm not involved at all. So,
okay.
Like I said, I know it's in.
You would be honest with me, right?
Of course I would. I'm on TV.
Okay.
I mean, it's. Yeah. I know it's out there. Right. I know it's out there. I know that every once in a while the president will say something about it. I don't know how seriously the president's taking it. I don't know kind of where his mind is with it, but I know that I want to work really hard to get him a good sentence.
What is Sean Combs saying about the possibility of a pardon? Is he asking you, the team, see what you can do by any means necessary? Like, what is his take on what he's willing to do or go through to be free?
I think he knows I'm not political. So he doesn't talk to me about it at all. I mean, we've never discussed it other than I tell him what's in the news about it. And
what's his reaction? Does he laugh? Does he say, let's look into it? What does he say?
Go tell him that I need a pardon. Go tell him I deserve a pardon. That's what he said. Go tell him I deserve a pardon. And I say, all right, so let's talk about your sentencing.
So you steer him back to what you're facing right now?
Yes, very much so. I'm a one-trick pony. I really am. I'm a courtroom guy. That's what I do. That's my forum. That's all I know. I'm a registered independent. I'm not political. And so I don't do anything about that.
So going back to the serious nature still of felony convictions, how are you preparing him? Are you telling him, listen, it could be on the higher side, it could be consecutively versus concurrently?
So, I tell him what the guidelines are, and the guidelines are about 2 or 3 years. And I tell him, the judge could go above the guidelines. That's rare, but possible. The judge could go below the guidelines. That's less rare in the Southern District of New York, and possible. And, the emphasis now is the same as the emphasis on the trial, is just to put the best effort forward, to show Judge Subramanian all the reasons why, leniency is appropriate, why the violence is in his past, why he's dealing with the violence. And at the end of the day, he wasn't convicted for anything having to do with violence. I mean, the jury affirmatively acquitted him of all of that. So we have to make all of those arguments the right way, the legal way, to the court.
Because this bail was denied, and that's what sort of we're dealing with now, it's less than 60 days before October 3rd is still the day. Mm-hmm. What do you think will happen on sentencing day?
I can't possibly, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I think Judge Subramanian's been fair throughout. He'll be fair here. Our fate is in our own hands, I feel. I feel like if we do a good job explaining the situation to our judge, I think we'll get a fair and reasonable sentence. I hope Mr. Combs goes home soon. Mm-hmm. I think he's paid a tremendous debt for what he's done. He's done things wrong. He was convicted of crimes, and he's done other things wrong. And we were forthcoming, as part of our trial presentation as to all of that. And I think in some ways he's a better person because of it.
What does he tell his children?
I actually don't know. I mean, I know he talks to them a lot. They're very present in his life.
I was going to say, day one, we saw 6 of his 7 children in the courtroom. You said that in your conversations with him, he talks about, wanting to establish that relationship, wanting to get back home. How difficult, I guess, has that been for him, trying to father behind bars, from behind bars?
It's very difficult because 4 of the kids, with him in jail, 4 of the kids have no parents at all. I mean, their mother passed away, and Mr. Combs is in jail.
Porter.
Correct. And I think he feels very, very bad about that. And I think he feels like he really wants to get back so that those kids have a parent, present to be their father, because they don't have a mother at this point, which is, tragic in general, but doubly tragic because, Mr. Combs is in jail.
A number of friends and family, I understand, have submitted letters. Was that for the bail hearing? Was that for the sentencing?
So it's for the sentencing.
And what are we to make of someone who accused Combs of domestic violence 5 years ago in a podcast, who then wrote a letter saying he's a good person, and today I believe doubled down on an Instagram post saying, why can't people accept that you can forgive people and move on? For those who will look at a letter from someone who was supposed to be victim number 3 in this case and go, she must have been paid, or the attorney clearly wrote that letter, what do you say to that?
She wasn't paid and the attorney didn't write it. I mean, I know she has a lawyer. I don't know between her and her lawyer how that letter was made, but I have every reason to believe that those are her genuine sentiments. And if her lawyer helped her write it, that sometimes happens. I think she's exactly right. And I think she would know. And I don't think she's here to just do him favors. I think this is how she genuinely feels. And I thought that her letter was very balanced. I think she said, was their relationship perfect? It wasn't perfect. I mean, and she led with that. And she said, but he always tried to do better. She saw him as a father and a loving figure. And I think this is all about redemption. I mean, I was raised Catholic, and I believe in redemption. And I think this is a story of redemption. And I think that's what he wants. He's religious as well. He was raised Catholic and Baptist. He went to Catholic high school. He went to Catholic church every Sunday. He went to Baptist church as well because of his grandmother. And I think he is telling a story of redemption. I think the Sean Combs story is a story of redemption and how important redemption is. And redemption as a function of character, both for the person who's asking for the redemption and for the people who we are asking to redeem that person. And I don't think it's a great gesture of character to carry anger. I think that's what Gina's follow-up is saying. I think it's a great gesture of character if someone really deserves redemption to let them achieve that. And that's really the Combs story right now, is one of redemption.
I want to go back to that last day in court for you, giving your closing argument, 4.5 hours. I heard in another interview that you had something ready and then you weren't comfortable with it and you went on a walk and you just came with what you said is, tell me a story.
Right.
Wanting to connect with the jury, which you believe, you had the shared experience with. Some criticized, what you had to say and how you said it. I remember doing an Instagram post myself where you talked about, the Astroglide is off the streets, and you said it in a way that was kind of mocking the fact that a lot went into raiding someone's home, and this is what they found. When you look back at that, explain to us, to the viewers, why you felt it was so important to not necessarily have everything written down, not stay behind the podium, but to use your hands to move back and forth. Again, there were no cameras in the courtroom, so we are the eyes and ears for the public. But what went into that? How you were feeling? I mean, to be up there for 4.5 hours. I prepared an outline, and the night before I read it over, and it was factually fine, but it was stale. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't a great story.
And I just wanted to tell the jury the story. And so I knew what I wanted to say.
Right.
And I knew that the jury had paid very close attention. So they didn't need me to put emails up on the screen for them to see for the 23rd time. The text messages or whatever the written communications were, they knew that stuff. And they paid very close attention to the testimony. They all took notes. All 17 jurors took notes throughout the entire trial. So they knew this stuff. What they didn't hear, and I didn't think the government really gave them a story, they didn't hear the story of this case, and so I just wanted to tell them a story. And I wanted to put my notes down, I only had 3 pages of handwritten notes anyway, and talk to them and look them in the face and, kind of look at them individually and sort of say, this is the story of this case. This is what the evidence shows. There's
a moment I think lawyers know when they have the audience, the jury. When was that for you?
So it's funny. It's a good question. I wasn't sure if I was going to be sarcastic or not. I wanted to sort of see how it would go. So when I was cross-examining one of the agents, I asked him, I said, so how many cases, how many search warrants have you recovered Astroglide? And he says, 1. I go, this one. And he was did terrorism cases and all these serious cases. And so I realized, and the jury kind of laughed at that. And so I realized that's going to be my jumping off point because I already have that kind of in the record. Mm-hmm. So early in my summation, I did the whole thing with, thank goodness they got the Astroglide, they got it off the street. And the jury reacted, well. They laughed, they kind of got it. And there's aspects of this trial. I mean, sarcasm could be a very effective tool, and as a storyteller, you want to use your full complement of tools. And it's sincerity and it's sometimes sarcasm. But at a certain point, it's not so much that I realized that I had the jury. I realized I was with the jury, and that's kind of really where I want to be, and I want to sort of be whatever their space is, I want to be in their space with them. And I realized that I was doing that. I was in that space with them. They were paying very close attention. They were kind of with me on, the different arguments. I kind of knew when they were ready for me to move on, and that's one of the things, and this is really a trial lawyer thing more than something unique to Combs. Mm-hmm. Trial lawyers need to get rid of their notes. I mean, you're talking to a jury, so be with the jury. Be with the jury. Where are they done on this topic? Then move on. Mm-hmm. If you had another 3 pages, forget it. It's time to move on. And they throw off an energy. There's something about a jury of people all compressed in a jury box that they actually throw off a lot of information. Mm-hmm. And if you're attuned to it and you're not staring at your notes and you're looking at them mm-hmm. and you're feeling them, you'll know exactly what to do next. And that's what the summation was.
So when you think about the very beginning and your first meeting with Sean Combs, what was it about this case that you said, I really want to represent you? Mm-hmm. Obviously, you had a lot of experience with racketeering mm-hmm. conspiracy, but right. You didn't have to take this case on.
No, I thought he was being targeted. I genuinely did. I thought that he's an outspoken guy. He ruffles feathers, and I thought they were looking to get him unfairly. I really believe that. The government, the government. And I thought he didn't do these things. I mean, I knew, because he was honest with me throughout. I mean, I knew there was issues in the past, with domestic violence and with his girlfriends. But that's not what they were looking to charge him with.
He was honest with you throughout. So did you know before the video was released of Cassie Ventura being slapped and kicked and punched that happened?
Well, I knew from her lawsuit, certainly, because she filed the lawsuit.
But you also know then that his reaction in the beginning was, this is outrageous.
Before I got involved in the case, I think that I've seen that, yes.
But when you were involved, that video didn't come out yet.
The video didn't come out.
But when it did,
right.
How did that change your relationship or any questions you had about someone you said had been forthcoming and someone that you trusted? Because
I had known that there was violence between him and Cassie.
Okay.
I mean, listen, I don't know why his
But you didn't know about the video prior to it coming out?
I didn't know that there was a video. I didn't know there was a video.
And when you saw that video, how did you feel personally?
It was a rough day. I remember thinking, I remember thinking this is just a terrible piece of evidence. It takes all the guesswork out of this aspect of the case. And I remember thinking they're going to indict him. They're not going to start this investigation. Then this video falls into their lap, and they're not going to indict him. He's definitely going to get indicted.
Because that played so big in this case, as you know, early on, even the idea of paying someone to make sure that this doesn't see the light of day, is that something that was revealed to you in any way, shape, or form? Maybe not seeing the video, obviously, or knowing the details of it outside of, okay, this is someone I'm representing who has admitted that there was some violence between him and his ex-girlfriend. But just that idea of paying someone $100,000 for video to bury it so no one sees it. Did you know that?
I did know that. I did know that. I mean, I knew that there was a video that the Intercontinental had. I hadn't seen it.
Okay.
I didn't think it existed. I mean, I thought that, it was sort of taken care of. And that was a mutual thing between, Sean and Cassie. I mean, Cassie had a premiere coming out. Nobody wanted this video leaked, I don't think anyone was concerned about it being a police matter. I think everybody was concerned about it being released on, TMZ or somewhere else.
When you think about the 34 witnesses that were called, 8 weeks almost, not technically 8 because there were some days we had off, but 8 weeks of this trial, 34 witnesses, and you decide not to call any witnesses. What was it about that final week when we as reporters were trying to figure out, are they going to call so-and-so? Are they going to call another ex-girlfriend? But nonetheless, you did not bring anyone to the witness stand. Why not?
Because what you do as a defense lawyer is you have your sort of checklist of what are the things I want to establish as matters of fact at this trial.
Right.
And if you can do it all through the government's witnesses, you don't have to call your own witnesses. And that's really the issue. So all of the things we wanted to establish, we really pretty much did through the government witnesses. And
so that's why you felt there was no need to call any
There's no
witnesses.
need to call any defense witnesses.
Did Combs want to testify at any point in this trial?
Yes, he wanted to testify. And I told him the same metric, what are you going to say that the jury hasn't heard?
And what did he say to that?
He's like, well, do you think that they're waiting for me to testify? I said, I think they would love Sean Combs to get on the stand and testify.
But what did he say he would have said had he gotten a chance to do that? I
mean, I think it would have been a lot of the things that are in the cross. Cassie and I loved each other. She said that. Cassie and I were sometimes toxic, but, we were really in love. She said that. All the different things that he would have said that were by way of sort of explanations or giving context, we got out from the government witnesses. And so what I told him is, you don't really have any road to cover that we haven't covered through the crosses. I mean, I was a great businessman. I was a successful businessman. We got that through the personal assistants. We got that through, you're the former CFO. You don't need to get up and say that. And I think he saw that we were right, that we really had brought all these things out in the government's case and that he didn't have to testify.
At what point in this 8 weeks did he feel comfortable agreeing with your suggestion that you should not take the stand?
I don't know that it was any one point in time. Okay. It was probably around halfway through the trial, maybe a little bit more than halfway through the trial.
So he was on board with this idea that, I don't need to testify.
So it's always, let's see how it goes.
Okay.
This is when it comes for your client testifying, you kick the can down the lane kind of by design. Let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. It's never over till it's over.
Right.
And we knew the government was going to put on these summary witnesses, and they were going to put on all these text messages and all these communications, and let's see how that goes. Let's see how that lands. Can we handle that on cross? Because if we can handle on cross, we'll just take care of it on cross, and you don't have to do it. We thought we handled it all.
He was so active in his own defense. I'm watching Combs many times, taking notes, handing you all Post-its, while you're cross-examining witnesses. How helpful was that? Were there moments where he was very helpful in proving something or changing the narrative or direction that you guys were going in?
So he's a chairman and a CEO, among other things. And he would remember the things we would talk about. So he would sort of remember to ask this. And sometimes, I'm really glad he wrote the Post-it. Sometimes he'll write a Post-it of something that, might be a good idea if it weren't a trial, but not maybe a great idea in the context of a trial. So it was mixed, but he was very active. And you guys are only seeing sort of the tip of the iceberg. I mean, he was a very involved, client in terms of being part of the defense team and, the strategies and sort of the ideas that we had for the best way to present his case. I mean, I thought it was important that the outstanding young women lawyers on our team played a very prominent role. So we had, Tenny do the opening, we had Anna, do the cross.
And that wasn't the original order of things. You said Anna wasn't always going to do the cross.
Right. So I had prepared the whole cross of Cassie. I mean, I prepared the whole thing. And I was here in my office till 2 o'clock in the morning one night. And I just felt there's something missing. There's some aspect of the trial that I'm not kind of getting to the heart of. And I walked to my apartment. I live in Lower Manhattan near Wall Street. And it's like an hour and a half walk. I get home at 3:30 in the morning. And I realize I should not cross Cassie. And I think Anna should cross Cassie. So the next day I call Anna. I go, how do you feel about crossing Cassie? And she's like, she's testifying in 3 weeks. I'm like, you can do it. You can do it.
Mm-hmm.
We will get you ready. And she worked really hard and she did a great job.
We as journalists were not able to see those sex videos. They were just for the jury. Mm-hmm. Did those videos, and I want to say it was probably a little over an hour worth of material.
That we showed the jury?
Yes.
Right.
Did that help your case more?
I thought it did. So one of the alternate jurors was interviewed and he referred to them as tame. And that's a fair way to put it. They were very, the hotel rooms were beautifully done. It wasn't aggressive. The word tame is not a bad description, and it was eminently, consensual. I mean, I didn't know what these videos were going to be like. They could have been very different in nature and problematic for us, but they weren't. They were just, adults, having very eminently, obviously consensual sex. So I thought they were good for us.
Have you spoken to Maureen Comey since she got let go?
I have not.
When you heard that news, were you surprised? I mean, I know when
yes.
I watch you all before the trial starts, it seems like everybody's very friendly.
We are.
You guys are smiling, you're laughing, and then of course once you go into, okay, you're the prosecution, I'm the defense.
I'm sad that what happened to her. I mean, she doesn't deserve that. She didn't do anything wrong. I don't think it has anything to do with this case. I don't think. But
what do you think it has to do with?
I've read it, related to Epstein. But I don't know. I have no idea. I'm sorry to see her go. I think she's a good prosecutor. Mm-hmm. I think she's a good lawyer. She'll land on her feet. She'll have a great career. But I think what's sad, the saddest part is, I thought for a while I might be a career prosecutor, and then I had a third kid and my wife's like, go make some money, so sometimes it happens. I think she wanted to be a career prosecutor and she should be given that opportunity.
Oftentimes I wonder, as an attorney, do you have any regrets in how you tried this case?
It's a good question. I am one to have regrets, just in general. Not really. What I told Tenny early on, I said, we have a good chance if we do everything perfectly, but we have to be perfect. Every cross-examination has to be perfect. We have to hit the right tone. We can't be sort of tone deaf. We can't be heavy-handed, with the female witnesses. And if we can do all those things, we have a shot. And I think we were fortunate enough that we did those things. And so I feel like when you're asked about something as intricate and as important as this, do you have any regrets or do you do anything differently? And you say no, maybe you're not really answering the question on a deep level. Mm-hmm. So I'm really trying to think about the question more. But no, we put a lot of thought into this. I don't know that I would have done anything differently.
You called the relationship between Combs and Ventura a great modern love story. Ventura says she was raped, physically abused, and became addicted to drugs because of Combs.
I think that's what makes it. The rape we vehemently deny. And I know I respect that she said that. I don't think the jury concluded that that happened. And there's a whole backstory as to why I think she would have made up that allegation, which we said to the jury. So I don't think that happened. And that's a very serious matter. So I'd lead with that one. In terms of the drugs and the other stuff, I think that's what makes it a modern love story. I mean, there's a strong tragic aspect to it. I think they really did love each other. I think she very much loved him, and I know he very much loved her. And what I told the jury, and they all nodded in agreement. I said, if you want some of the most beautiful writing you've ever seen, look at their text messages from when they're breaking up in 2019. I mean, they're just so heartfelt, and just you can't. The greatest fiction writer couldn't really write them with kind of the poignancy and the power, and the tragic nature. I mean, these are two people who hurt each other, loved each other, cheated on each other, and it's very apparent to both of them that they're just not going to be together much longer. And their writing is just so beautiful and sad around this. So I maintain that that's true.
Kind of starting from the beginning, take us inside the courtroom right before the verdict is read. And I can't imagine your heart must have been racing. I don't think many of us, based off of, we're stuck on racketeering conspiracy the night before. In my mind, they needed a little bit of time, not just about an hour. So what was going on?
So the most nervous time for me was when they had verdicts on 4 counts the day before.
Okay.
That was nerve-wracking because I hadn't really processed it. Like, what does it mean? They have 4 verdicts, but they don't have a verdict on the RICO conspiracy count. And then at 3 a.m, it kind of hit me. And I remember thinking, and I actually said to Tenny, I sent her a text, and I said, we're going to make a bail application. It's going to be a good verdict for us. We're going to go down, I think we're going to go down on the prostitution, but we're going to win the RICO and we're going to win the sex trafficking. So let's get our ducks in a row to make a bail application. We're going to need to know like that where the plane is, so that the government's like, he still has a plane. He doesn't have access to the plane. We need, where are the kids' passports? Where's his passport? So I actually thought it was going to be a good verdict. And I thought it was going to be quick. So when the verdict actually came in at 10 o'clock, I was probably much less nervous than I am in a typical case, because I remember thinking they acquitted of the RICO, they acquitted of the sex trafficking.
But it's not until you hear those words, right?
For sure.
And no, when you did hear not guilty on racketeering conspiracy, you did what? I
waited until sex trafficking count 2. That's when I knew it was going to be okay. They say not guilty on RICO. They can still convict him of sex trafficking, which is a 15-year mandatory minimum just for 1 count. So right. I waited, bated breath until that. And then they said not guilty on that. And then I said, I bet they're going to say guilty now on prostitution. And they did. And then I'm like, well, could they have possibly convicted him of sex trafficking, for Jane? And they said no, he was not guilty of that.
Right.
And so, no, but there's nothing like it. It's the most nerve-wracking, maybe with the exception of the birth of my 3 children, and do they have 10 fingers and toes? Are they breathing? It's almost at that level.
I heard when you were on the elevator, you got in there, you took a deep breath, and someone asked you, how do you feel? And you said, relieved. I said, I'm relieved that I'm not miserable. And that's the funny thing with these things. If you win, you're relieved, and if you lose, you're miserable. I carry my trial losses with me forever. I dream about them. I dream that the jury's still out, for the losses. The wins are not as good as the losses are bad. The losses are terrible, and the wins are reliefs. So I don't know why I do this for a living, but I'm going to keep doing it apparently. Kanye West showed up during this trial.
He did.
When you heard he was in the building, what were you thinking?
I had mixed feelings. On the one hand, I think he was there to support Combs, and so I want to encourage people to support Combs. He certainly has had a lot of people in his life, in the last several years who haven't supported him and, detracted from him and things like that. So I wanted him in the courtroom for that reason, but I also I thought the trial was going well. I thought Kenny and I were having the perfect trial that we wanted to have, and I didn't want to take any chances. And so I thought that seemed like it could be a little risky. What would the jury think? Why is he there? And so I had mixed feelings about it. But I'm happy that he came, and I'm happy that he supported Mr. Combs.
Even with this case not quite behind him yet, because there's a sentencing, but the weight of what it could have been, there's still a bunch of civil lawsuits Combs is facing, over 70. Life is not going to be the same. I mean, I know he talks about the idea of performing in Madison Square Garden, but he's facing dozens of civil lawsuits if he gets out.
I don't think a lot of them have a lot of merit. I mean, I think if they had merit, they would have found their way into the criminal case. I mean, the prosecutors, scoured the earth for evidence that I think they thought had merit. And so even more than me thinking that it doesn't have merit, I think if it didn't find its way into the criminal case, the prosecutors didn't think it had merit. And so I think they will all go by the wayside one by one. But it could take years.
It could take years. And that's a lot of money he's going to be spending.
It's a lot of money. He has the tremendous misfortune of having lawyers around him all the time now. So that's not easy for anybody. So yeah.
Costs a lot of money.
Costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money, and it's a drag. I mean, but ultimately, I think the criminal case really is kind of the one thing that everyone can kind of have faith in. I mean, it's anybody can bring a lawsuit, and the government, the government put a lot of work into this case, and it brought charges that it thought had merit, and the jury spoke and said what it said, after really paying very close attention to all of the evidence. We had a very careful judge. It was a very good trial. And so I don't think, we're not too worried about the civil lawsuits.
If Sean Combs were sitting right here, what would he say?
He would say, that's a great question. He would say, I have more to give the world. I want to get out, and I want to show the world that I have more to give. I've done things when I was a younger man. I did them in a way a younger man did them. And he'll talk about, he built businesses. He built businesses maybe no one else could build. I mean, I don't know that anyone could have built the record company he built, and then, made it, a fashion label and sort of like this lifestyle. And I think he has a sense and he has a vision. I was talking to him the other day. My daughter, who's a paralegal with us, Sophia, ran into Mrs. Combs at the jail. And she comes back to me and she says she's the most glamorous, fashionable woman I've ever met. And she really is. She just has this wonderful sense of fashion. I think in part because her sense of fashion was probably derived from when, there was real, not that there's not now, but real glamour. There was a different sense of glamour, in the 50s. And so, I remember some of one of my grandmother was very fashionable, and I think Sean carries that tradition. And I think he brings it, into an urban arena with urban sensibilities, but he has a great, strong sense of fashion and, and glamour. And I think he's going to do great things. And I think he's going to do great things as a mature, older man. He's not a brash 25-year-old anymore. He's 55 and he's been through tremendous challenges. He's lost women he's loved. He's lost being with his 7 kids. And he's had time to really reflect. And he relies on his faith. He relies on being religious. And I think we're going to see a very different Sean Combs. And I think it's going to be wonderful.
Does Sean Combs have a message for Cassie and Jane?
If he did, I probably wouldn't be in a position to give it because the trial's not over. So that's a very good question, but one that I can't answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.